Imagine this. It's a Tuesday, completely normal Tuesday. You're at work, you're going through your emails, maybe you're on your third cup of coffee, and then your manager taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, can we talk?" And in that moment, before a single word comes out of their mouth, your stomach just drops because somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know. And the first thought that hits you, not what am I going to do about my career? The first thought is, how long can I pay my bills? If that scenario made your chest tighten even a little bit, this video is for you. My name is Smith, and I spend way too much time thinking about emergency funds. If you're someone who knows they should have savings, but every month somehow ends with your account looking basically the same as it did 30 days ago, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because today we're going to fix that. Not with motivation, not with a vision board, with a real step-by-step plan to build a $10,000 crisis fund faster than you think is possible. Let's get into it. Here's the thing. Most people think an emergency fund is just a savings goal, like it's something you work toward slowly over years, and one day you wake up and you've got it. And sure, technically that's true, but that framing completely misses why the emergency fund exists in the first place. And when you don't understand the why, you never treat it with the urgency it actually deserves. The emergency fund isn't a savings goal. It's insurance. It's the financial equivalent of a smoke detector in your house. You don't put in a smoke detector because you plan on having a fire. You put it in because if a fire happens, the difference between having one and not having one is catastrophic. Your $10,000 crisis fund is the same thing. It's not there to make you rich. It's there to make sure that one bad month doesn't turn into a bad year. And bad months happen more than people want to admit. According to a Federal Reserve survey, nearly 40% of Americans said they couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. $400. That's not a crisis. That's a car repair. That's a dental bill. That's a flight home for a family emergency. And almost half the country is one $400 surprise away from financial stress. Let that sink in. Now look, I'm not telling you that to make you feel bad. I'm telling you that because if you're in that 40%, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not stuck there. The people who break out of that cycle don't do it because they suddenly started earning more money. They do it because they changed their relationship with the money they already have. That's what we're doing today. So let's talk about the target, $10,000. Why 10,000? Here's what most people don't realize. The standard advice is to save 3 to 6 months of expenses, and that's correct advice. But for most people, that number is so abstract, so far away, that it becomes paralyzing. You hear 6 months of expenses and you think, that's like $30,000, and then you close the tab and go watch something else. 10,000 is different. 10,000 is concrete. It's a number your brain can actually see. And depending on your situation, 10,000 might genuinely cover 3 to 4 months of bare bones living, rent, food, utilities, transportation, the essentials, which means if something goes wrong, you have a real runway to figure it out without making desperate decisions. Desperate decisions, by the way, are expensive. This is where it gets interesting. When people don't have an emergency fund, what happens? They borrow. They put it on a credit card at 22% interest. They take out a personal loan. They dip into their retirement account and pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of income tax. They sell investments at the worst possible time because they have no choice. The absence of an emergency fund doesn't just leave you vulnerable, it actively costs you money. So building this fund isn't just a defensive move, it's one of the highest return financial decisions you can make. You cannot outinvest the return on not paying 22% credit card interest. Okay, so we've established the why. Now let's talk about the how, and this is where most financial advice completely falls apart. Most people, when they decide to build an emergency fund, do this. They look at their budget, they find a little wiggle room, maybe $200 or $300 a month, and they start setting it aside, which is fine. But at $300 a month, you're looking at almost 3 years to hit $10,000. 3 years is a long time to be unprotected. 3 years is a long time to stay motivated. Most people quit long before they get there. We need a faster approach. The fastest path to $10,000 is not a single strategy. It's a combination of 3 things happening at the same time. You attack your expenses, you attack your income, and you engineer your psychology so you don't self-sabotage. Let's go through each one. First, expenses. Now, you might be thinking, Smith, I already know I need to cut expenses. I've heard this before. And yeah, you probably have. But here's the thing. Most people cut the wrong expenses. They give up their morning coffee, they cancel their one streaming service, they feel virtuous for about a week, and then they wonder why the needle isn't moving. That's because you're trimming the leaves when the roots are the problem. The three biggest categories of spending for most people are housing, transportation, and food. That's it. Everything else is almost noise by comparison. A 2023 Bureau of Labor Statistics report showed that those three categories alone account for over 60% of the average American's budget. So if you want to make a real dent, you have to be willing to look at the big stuff. Now, I'm not saying you need to move. I'm not saying sell your car. What I am saying is look at your biggest expenses with fresh eyes for just 30 days. Can you get a roommate and split rent? Can you refinance your car insurance? Because the average person overpays by $500 a year just by not shopping around. Can you meal prep instead of ordering delivery 4 times a week? Because if you're spending $80 a week on food delivery, that's $320 a month. That's $3,840 a year. That's almost 40% of your entire emergency fund right there, just in delivery fees and convenience markups. Here's a number I want you to write down. Find $500 a month. That's the minimum viable contribution to make this plan work in a reasonable time frame. Not $50, not $100, $500. If you look at your budget and you genuinely cannot find $500 of flex, which for most people is achievable when you look at the big three, then we have to talk about the income side, which honestly might be the more powerful lever anyway. Here's what most people don't realize about building savings quickly. Cutting expenses has a floor. You cannot cut below zero. But income has no ceiling. And in 2025, the opportunities to earn extra income are genuinely better than they've ever been in history. I'm not talking about passive income fantasies. I'm talking about trading time for money in the short term with a specific goal in mind. Think about this. If you can earn an extra $500 a month outside your main job for the next 10 months, combined with saving $500 from your existing budget, you're putting away $1,000 a month. At that rate, you hit $10,000 in 10 months. 1 year. That's it. 1 year of focused, intentional effort, and you are sitting on a $10,000 financial cushion for the rest of your life. That is a trade worth making. What does earning an extra $500 a month look like? It looks like driving for a rideshare company on weekends. About 2 to 3 hours on a Friday and Saturday night can clear $100 to $150 in most cities. It looks like tutoring one subject you already know, which on platforms like Wyzant or Tutor.com pays $30 to $75 per hour. It looks like selling things you already own. The average American household has over $3,000 worth of unused items collecting dust. Not a joke. $3,000 sitting in your closets and storage spaces. One good eBay or Facebook Marketplace weekend could fund a significant chunk of this goal right there. Now look, I'm not romanticizing side hustles. They are real work. They require time and energy that you may feel like you don't have. But here's the psychological reframe that changes everything. This is temporary. You're not committing to driving rideshare for the next decade. You're doing it for 10 months with a specific number and a specific exit. That changes how it feels completely. There's a difference between a sentence and a sprint. You're choosing to sprint. Now, let's talk about the psychology, because this is honestly where most plans succeed or fail, and most financial content just skips right past it. Here's the thing about saving money. It's not actually a math problem. The math is simple. We all know we're supposed to spend less than we earn. The problem is behavioral. It's emotional. It's the fact that your brain is literally wired to prefer a smaller reward now over a larger reward later. Psychologists call it hyperbolic discounting. What it means in plain English is that your $10,000 emergency fund living in the future always feels less real, less compelling, less urgent than the restaurant your friends just invited you to tonight. And that's not weakness. That's just how human brains work. So the solution isn't to fight your brain. It's to engineer your environment so your brain doesn't have to fight in the first place. Step 1. Automate everything. The moment your paycheck hits, money should be moving automatically to a separate account before you ever see it or feel it. This is not optional. This is the single most important structural decision you can make. Research from behavioral economist Richard Thaler, the same work that eventually won him a Nobel Prize, shows that automatic enrollment and automatic transfers increase savings rates dramatically compared to systems that require active choices. When saving is the default, people save. When spending is the default, people spend. Change your default. Step 2. Open a high-yield savings account at a different bank than your checking account. I know that sounds like a small detail. It's not. The physical and psychological friction of having to log in to a different bank, initiate a transfer, and wait 2 business days creates just enough of a barrier that you won't impulsively dip into it. Your emergency fund should feel slightly inaccessible during non-emergencies. Not locked away, but not one tap away on the same app you use to check your balance while you're bored. Separate it. Step 3. Name your account. I'm serious. Most banks let you give your accounts custom names. Call it Crisis Fund or My 10,000 or whatever makes it feel real and purposeful to you. Studies in behavioral finance consistently show that people are less likely to spend money that has been mentally earmarked for a specific goal. Naming your account is the digital equivalent of writing on an envelope. It works. Step 4, and this one is counterintuitive, celebrate small milestones out loud. Not with spending, just with acknowledgement. Tell someone. Post about it if that's your thing. When you hit $1,000, recognize it. When you hit $2,500 halfway, seriously recognize it. Because here's what most people don't realize. Motivation doesn't lead to progress. Progress leads to motivation. Most people wait to feel motivated before they start. The research says it works the other way. You take the action first, you see the small result, and that result creates the motivation to keep going. Your milestones are fuel. Use them. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about debt? What if I have credit card debt? Should I be paying that down instead of building this fund? Great question, and here's my take, and it's a little different from the strict textbook answer. If you have high-interest debt, anything above 15%, I would recommend a split approach. Put roughly 70% of your extra money towards debt payoff and 30% towards your crisis fund. Here's why. If you put everything towards debt and then an emergency hits, you're going back to the credit card anyway. You've made no net progress. But if you keep putting $150 or $200 a month into your crisis fund while attacking debt with the rest, you're building both a balance and a behavioral habit. You're training yourself to save. And when the debt is gone, that money you were paying toward it gets added to your savings rate and you finish the crisis fund in a fraction of the time. The goal is never to need to use a credit card for an emergency again. That's the whole point. Let's do the full math one more time so it's completely clear. You find $500 in expense reductions. That's realistic if you look at food delivery, subscriptions, and 1 or 2 larger categories. You earn $500 extra per month for 10 months. 2 weekend mornings of rideshare or 1 or 2 tutoring sessions a week or selling unused items or any combination. You automate $1,000 to a separate named high-yield savings account. In 10 months, less than 1 calendar year, you have $10,000. And if you get a tax refund, a work bonus, or sell something significant, you could hit it in 7 or 8 months. From that point forward, the emergency fund is done. You maintain it, you replenish it if you ever use it, but you don't need to keep building it. All that energy, all that hustle, all that discipline, you now redirect it towards your next financial goal. Investing, paying off your mortgage early, building a business. The possibilities open up dramatically when you're not one bad week away from financial panic. Here's the thing I want to leave you with. The $10,000 crisis fund is not the destination. It's the foundation. It's what everything else gets built on. Because here's what nobody tells you about financial security. It's not about being rich. It's about having options. When you have $10,000 sitting in an account that nobody can touch except you in an actual emergency, you start making decisions differently. You don't take the first job offer out of desperation. You don't stay in a bad situation because you can't afford to leave. You don't spiral into panic when life does what life does. You have space. And space, financial space, the ability to breathe and think and choose is what money is actually for. Most people think the point of money is consumption. Buy stuff, have experiences, live well, and yeah, those things matter. But before any of that comes stability, security, the knowledge that you can handle what's coming even when you don't know what's coming. That's what the crisis fund gives you. Not luxury, foundation. You can start today, not Monday, not when things slow down at work. Today, open the account, set up the automatic transfer, look at your budget with fresh eyes, make the decision, because every day you delay is another day you're running without a net, and that's a completely unnecessary risk that a little bit of focused effort can eliminate forever. You've got this. Let's build the foundation. I'll see you in the next one.